my mom said quietly. This weekend's just for the people who really matter. My sister added. You wouldn't enjoy it anyway. I raised my glass and said, Understood. That night, I cancelled every resort booking and reversed the spa deposit. At the dock, they were told, Nothing's paid. My dad's call came first. Fix this now. I smiled and replied, I've always been the one who foots the bill. Vacations, birthdays, unexpected hospital bills, new furniture, even car repairs. Whenever someone in my family needed something, I stepped in. Not once did I make a big deal out of it. I thought it was what you did when you were fortunate enough to have more than enough. My company had been doing well for years, I'd made the right investments, and money was never the issue. What I didn't realize back then was that generosity, if never respected, can quietly turn into a leash, one they could pull any time they wanted something. It was a Thursday evening in late summer. We were in my parents' backyard, the string lights buzzing faintly above the patio. Everyone had a glass in hand, laughing about something my cousin had done on a past trip. I wasn't really part of the conversation until my mom looked directly at me and said, almost as if it was just an afterthought, that this weekend was only for the people who truly matter. Before I could respond, my sister leaned back in her chair and added that I wouldn't enjoy it anyway, her voice dripping with that casual dismissal I'd been hearing from her for years. It was the kind of comment that pretends to be harmless but lands like a slap. I raised my glass and said, Got it. My smile didn't falter. To them, it probably looked like I was letting it roll off my back. But in that moment, a switch flipped. I had been funding these family weekends for years. Flights, hotels, meals, activities, and here they were making it clear I wasn't even considered part of the inner circle. The thing they didn't realize was that this particular weekend wasn't just something they'd cobbled together. I had been the one who booked the oceanfront resort months in advance, securing the suites with panoramic views. I'd reserved the spa package my mom wouldn't stop talking about, prepaid for the treatments so they wouldn't have to pull out a card. I'd even covered the deposit for the yacht they were planning to take out for an afternoon sail, complete with a catered lunch and champagne. They didn't even know the cost because, as always, I'd handled it all quietly. That night, I drove home without saying another word about it. I poured myself another drink, opened my laptop, and logged into my accounts. One by one, I erased everything. The resort, cancelled. The spa, refunded. The yacht, gone from the schedule. I didn't just cancel. I made sure the bookings couldn't be reactivated without my direct approval. I sat there for a moment afterward, feeling an unfamiliar mix of calm and anticipation. The pieces were set. They wouldn't know until it was too late. And for the first time in years, I was looking forward to seeing their reactions. Saturday morning came with the kind of weather that makes travel brochures look believable. Clear blue sky, soft breeze, sunlight reflecting off the water like glitter. It was the perfect day for a luxury yacht outing, the very one my family had been bragging about to anyone who'd listen. I woke up earlier than usual, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to picture every moment as it happened. I made coffee, sat on my balcony, and imagined the scene unfolding at the dock. They would have been in high spirits on the drive there. My mom probably had her oversized sun hat, and that silk scarf she only wore on important occasions. My sister would be scrolling through her phone, already composing the Instagram captions in her head. My dad would be going over the itinerary out loud like he'd personally arranged everything. They had no idea that the only reason any of it was possible was because I'd quietly made it happen months ago. By the time they stepped onto the dock, I imagined my mom was already waving at the crew, expecting the red carpet treatment. The yacht captain, tall guy, always in sunglasses, would have greeted them with a clipboard. He'd ask for the reservation name, and my mom would give it like she was announcing royalty. Then, the pause. It wouldn't have been long, just long enough for the smile to fade from her face. The captain would check his list again, tap the screen of his tablet, and finally tell her that there was no booking under that name. My mom, of course, would insist there had to be some mistake. My sister would step in, voice rising, telling him to check again. The captain, professional but firm, would show them the timestamp of the cancellation. He'd even point out that the payment had been refunded in full. My sister would demand to know to whom, as if she didn't already suspect. My mom would double down, saying she had confirmed everything herself, which was a lie, because she had never lifted a finger to arrange a single part of this trip. I pictured my dad stepping aside to make a call, muttering about straightening this out. A few seconds later, my phone lit up with his name. "Fix this now," he said the moment I answered, no greeting, no preamble. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the bitterness settle before I replied. "No." For a moment, there was nothing but background noise, waves slapping against the dock, muffled voices, maybe my sister yelling at someone nearby. "You think this is funny?" he asked. I said, "You told me I wouldn't enjoy the weekend. I took your advice." Then I ended the call. I knew exactly what would happen next. They'd scramble to save face, maybe try to pay for the yacht themselves, only to realize how expensive it really was. They'd think about calling the resort to check in early, but the same thing would happen there. The entire weekend they'd been so confident about was a house of cards, and I just pulled the bottom piece out. What they didn't know yet was that the yacht was just the first domino. After I hung up on my dad at the dock, the silence from their side lasted about an hour. I imagined them pacing, trying to figure out how to turn things back in their favor. My dad has always been the problem solver, but only when the solution involves someone else footing the bill. My mom would be playing the dignity card, acting like this was beneath her to even address. My sister? She'd be running her mouth, pointing fingers at everyone except herself. When my phone finally lit up again, it was my sister calling. I let it ring. Then again. Then my mom. Then my sister. By the time the fifth call came, I'd already put my phone on silent and set it face down on the counter. I was making breakfast when my cousin's name popped up on my screen with a text that just read, "What happened? Your mom's crying at the marina." I could picture it clearly, her sitting on one of those wooden benches, sunglasses on, trying to play the victim for anyone within earshot. My sister would be pacing nearby, phone in hand, calling every relative she could think of to tell them what Andrew just did. That's her pattern. Make enough noise, get enough people to pick a side, and eventually the pressure forces someone to cave. But this time, they weren't dealing with the old version of me. About an hour later, my dad called again. His tone had shifted, less yelling, more probing. "Tell me straight. Did you cancel the resort too?" I didn't answer. Just let the pause stretch long enough for him to realize I didn't need to confirm anything. I heard him exhale through his nose, that short, sharp sound he makes when he's cornered. Then the line went dead. It didn't take long for the next update. My cousin, the same one who texted me earlier, called to say they had packed up and driven to the resort. They walked in, luggage rolling behind them, expecting their keys to be waiting. The front desk staff looked at the computer, then politely explained there was no reservation in their names. The system showed the booking had been cancelled 3 days earlier, and the funds returned to the original payment method. That's when the realization must have hit them. My sister apparently launched into the same routine she'd used at the dock, claiming there had been some horrible mix-up, demanding to see a manager, dropping my name like it was a magic password. My mom stood stiffly beside her, insisting she'd confirmed the details personally, which was a flat-out lie. My dad pulled out his credit card, ready to throw money at the problem, but peak season prices at a luxury oceanfront resort were not what they had budgeted for, and even if they had been willing to pay, the resort was fully booked. The only vacancies in town were at budget motels far from the water. One didn't have air conditioning, another had one-star reviews about mold. My mom refused to even consider them. They stood in the parking lot for nearly an hour, trying to figure out what to do, while my sister kept calling relatives for support. Some relatives offered sympathy. None offered their credit card. By late afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom, "We need to talk." I read it, set my phone down, and went back to seasoning the ribeye I was about to throw on the grill. The sun was warm, the air smelled like rosemary and charcoal, and for the first time in a long time, my weekend was entirely my own. And I knew they were just getting started. By Sunday morning, it was clear they'd moved past the "this must be a misunderstanding" phase. Now it was a coordinated campaign. The calls came in clusters: mom, dad, sister, then Aunt Carol, then my cousin Emily. They weren't acting individually anymore. They were working as a unit, each taking turns like they were running shifts in a siege. The first voice I actually picked up wasn't any of theirs. It was my cousin Mark. We haven't had a proper conversation in years, which told me immediately he'd been pushed into the role of neutral peacemaker. He started with harmless chit-chat about my business, then gradually slid into the real reason for the call. He told me mom was really upset, that the whole family was talking about this mess. and that I should just sort it out. Because family comes before pride. I told him it wasn't pride. It was principle. That they'd gotten so used to me paying for everything that they felt entitled to it, and that telling me I didn't matter while enjoying the very things I paid for was where the line was drawn. He didn't like that answer. I could hear the awkward pause before he muttered something about, maybe they didn't mean it that way. By late morning, the approach shifted. My mom sent a massive group text that included her, my dad, my sister, both aunts, and a couple of cousins. The tone was theatrical. She claimed my decision had humiliated them in front of strangers, that people at the marina had witnessed our embarrassment, and that the family's reputation would take years to rebuild. The last line caught my attention. You've always handled our accounts. Maybe we should rethink that. That was the first indication they were thinking of turning this into a power play. Years ago, my parents had asked me to manage a joint investment account for them. I'd done it for free, kept it growing, never took a cent. The fact that they were even hinting at using it as leverage told me two things. One, they were desperate, and two, they'd seriously misjudged my tolerance for being threatened. Then came the twist. Around 3 in the afternoon, I got an email from the general manager of the resort, addressed directly to me. He said he'd received a formal complaint from my sister, alleging that the cancellations were fraudulent and that I had stolen her vacation. She had even tried to escalate it to the corporate level, demanding they reinstate the bookings at no cost to her and claiming that my actions were financial abuse. I called the manager immediately. He was professional, but I could tell from his tone that he thought the whole thing was absurd. I explained that I was the original payer, the account holder, and the only authorized person on the reservation. I also made it clear that my sister had no legal or financial rights to any of it. He chuckled softly and said, I figured as much. She's been calling every hour since yesterday. By evening, the family's messages had shifted tone again. The pleading was gone. Now it was pure entitlement. My dad wrote that I owed them for everything they'd done for me over the years. My sister added that if I didn't fix it, I'd burn every bridge in this family. My mom tried one last angle, saying she'd never forget how I'd abandoned them in a moment of need. I poured myself a drink and sat on my balcony, the glass cool in my hand. They were scrambling because, for the first time, they were seeing a truth they'd ignored for years. Without me, they couldn't fund their own lifestyle. And worse, they had no real way to force my hand. They were about to find out just how much control I'd always had. Monday afternoon, I was in my home office catching up on work when I noticed movement in the security camera feed. My driveway, usually empty this time of day, now had a rideshare idling at the curb. 2 figures got out. Even from the grainy camera angle, I knew exactly who they were. First, my sister in her oversized sunglasses, the kind she wears when she wants to be taken seriously. She was holding her phone like it was a recording device, probably ready to document whatever conversation she planned to start. A few seconds later, my mom stepped out from the other side of the car, moving slower, her face set in that expression she wears when she's about to guilt someone into submission. I didn't open the door right away. I let them stand there for a minute, wondering if I'd even acknowledge them. Then I stepped into the hallway, unlocked the door, and leaned on the frame. I didn't invite them in. My sister jumped in immediately. She said I'd proven whatever point I was trying to make, and that it was time to fix things before this gets worse. I asked her what worse meant. She smirked, said the family had ways of making sure I'd regret letting money get between us. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me, and kept my back to it like a barrier. Then I told them what I'd been holding back for years. I reminded them of every vacation, every meal, every bill I'd quietly covered without a second thought. I told them it was never an obligation, it was my choice. But they had turned it into an expectation. They hadn't thanked me, they treated it as their right. I explained that the ruined weekend wasn't punishment, it was a preview. From here on out, they would book their own trips, pay for their own luxuries, and learn what it was like to plan without assuming I'd pick up the tab. My mom tried to cut in with the same emotional appeals she'd always used, talking about family unity and respecting our bond, but I didn't give her room. I told them that as of this morning, I had removed myself from every financial arrangement I'd been overseeing for the family. The investment account I'd been growing for my parents was still intact, but they now had full control of it, which also meant they had full responsibility. No more quiet management. No more safety net. My sister's posture shifted. The arrogance was leaking out of her voice. She started to say something about what people will think when they hear about all this. I cut her off. I told her the only people who cared about their image were them, and that public perception wasn't worth the years of entitlement I tolerated. It was quiet for a few moments after that. Then my mom told my sister they should leave before they made a scene. They turned and walked back toward the waiting car, not speaking to each other. The rideshare pulled away. My phone stayed silent for hours. Then, just after 9 that night, I got a single text from my dad. Message received. But I knew from experience that received didn't mean understood. And it definitely didn't mean accepted. The first few days after that standoff at my front door were dead quiet. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. Not even one of my sister's trademark cryptic posts online. On the surface, it could have looked like they'd accepted it. But I knew better. My family doesn't retreat, they regroup. It started on the 4th day. I noticed a post from my cousin Emily, a sunset photo with the caption, "Some people forget who helped them shine." No names, but the timing was too obvious. The next morning, my Aunt Carol uploaded a beach photo of her kids with the line, "We still know how to have a good time without drama." My sister went for the full performance. A mirror selfie in a worn-out spa robe captioned, #self-care on my own dime, like it was a victory lap instead of a consolation prize. The irony was that all of these jabs only made them look more desperate. I didn't respond to any of them. I wanted them to sit with the discomfort. 2 weeks later, my mom called. She sounded casual at first, asking if I'd be coming to Thanksgiving. I gave her a non-committal answer, knowing that wasn't the real reason she'd reached out. Sure enough, after a pause, she let it slip. "Things have been tight since you stepped back from the accounts." That was putting it lightly. My dad had apparently tried to handle one of the brokerage logins and managed to lock himself out after multiple failed password attempts. The automated security protocols froze their access for 72 hours, during which my mom said they felt trapped. My sister, meanwhile, had been coming to them for loans between paychecks, but she was still spending money on brunches, clothes, and whatever she could justify as a necessity. I told my mom exactly what I'd told her on my doorstep. The days of me fixing their problems and funding their fun without being respected were over. She didn't argue. She just went quiet, then started talking about the weather. A month later, my sister made another move. I got an email invitation for a family weekend in the mountains. The way it was worded was careful, no mention of cost, just the expectation that if I accepted, I'd automatically cover the cabins. I replied with 2 words. "Sounds expensive." She never responded. Over the next few months, I saw the shift. At family gatherings, they avoided bringing up vacations or big purchases around me. My sister kept her distance unless other people were in the room. My dad stayed polite but short. My mom tried to smooth things over with small talk, but she never brought up money again. The most telling change wasn't in what they said, it was in what they didn't say. No more "We should all go somewhere" comments. No more hint-dropping about upgrades or gifts. They had learned, the hard way, that I could cut the cord and walk away without looking back. It wasn't just about that ruined weekend anymore. It was about resetting the balance after years of unspoken expectations. They now knew, without question, that the safety net they'd been swinging on wasn't theirs, it was mine. And I could pull it away any time. And in that knowledge, they finally started treading carefully. That was the real victory. 2 weeks after the so-called family weekend in the mountains invite, things had gone quiet enough that I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally let it go. No phone calls. No group texts. No passive-aggressive posts from my sister's Instagram. I started to think the lesson had actually stuck. But with my family, silence isn't surrender. It's preparation. The first sign came in the form of an email from my accountant with the subject line, "Urgent, potential fraud." Inside, she'd forwarded a message from the property management company that handles one of my rental homes. According to them, someone had called claiming to be me, saying there was a change in my financial strategy, and that rent payments needed to be sent to a new bank account for tax purposes. They'd even used my old high school address as verification, something that's not public knowledge and hasn't been relevant in decades. The property manager immediately suspected something was off. He refused the change, told the caller he'd need written verification, and contacted my accountant directly. The second sign came later that night. My cousin Emily called me, which is rare enough to raise suspicion. She sounded hesitant, almost apologetic, and told me my sister had been asking her oddly specific questions about my assets, which properties were in my name, which were owned through my company, how much I kept in liquid funds. Emily claimed she didn't give any answers, but she thought I should know. Then she added something else. Apparently, my mom had been meeting with a friend who's good with paperwork. Emily didn't say it outright, but I knew what she meant. Someone who knew how to dig into public and semi-public financial records, maybe even find creative ways to pressure access. By the next morning, I didn't need confirmation. My sister posted one of her cryptic, self-satisfied messages on Facebook. Some people think cutting ties makes them untouchable. It doesn't. This wasn't just bitterness anymore. It was reconnaissance. Probing. Looking for weak spots they could exploit. And that's when I decided something important. I wasn't going to keep waiting for their next attempt. I'd stopped playing defense. It was time to go on the offensive, to lock down every account, every property, every single point of possible access before they even realized the doors were closing. They thought they could get clever. I was about to show them what clever actually looked like. Once I decided to go on the offensive, I didn't wait. By noon that day, I had my attorney on the phone, my accountant in my inbox, and my property manager on a three-way call. I wanted everything reviewed, every account, every property, every automatic payment, every access point where my name intersected with theirs. We started with the joint investment account I'd been managing for my parents. It was still in good shape, but I transferred oversight to a trust in my name alone, with a new attorney as the sole administrator. My parents were still beneficiaries. I wasn't taking their money, but they could no longer touch a cent without my explicit sign-off. Next were the properties. I confirmed all deeds were either in my personal name or my company's, then added a fraud alert with the county recorder's office. If anyone so much as attempted to file a change in ownership or lien, I'd get notified instantly. Bank accounts got two-step verification with a physical security key, the kind you have to plug into your computer to log in. No phone-based codes. No chance of accidentally being reset by someone who guessed my personal details. Even the yacht club membership, the one my dad liked to flash around as if it were his, got updated. The club manager now knew that no one but me had authorization to book, charge, or even access the property under my membership. It took less than a week. By the time I was done, there wasn't a single part of my financial life they could reach. The first sign that they noticed came when my dad tried to log into the joint account to check something, and got an error message. He called me, voice sharp, asking why it was locked. I told him it wasn't locked, it was secure. And that if he needed something, he could make a formal request through my attorney. The second sign came from my sister, who apparently tried to call the property manager about adjusting the rental payments on one of my houses. He told her he couldn't discuss anything without my written authorization. She didn't even bother to contact me afterward. My mom didn't call at all. But I heard from Emily that she'd stopped bragging to her friends about family weekends or Andrew's generosity. For the first time in years, they couldn't touch anything of mine, not my money, not my bookings, not even my name to get special treatment. And I could feel the shift. They weren't happy about it, but they knew they couldn't undo it. That was the point. They thought the weekend I canceled was the message. It wasn't. The real message was this: they had never been entitled to my success, and now, they couldn't even pretend they were. And this time, there was no going back.